For many Lions fans, the offseason is a time when they try to predict what exactly Brad Holmes is going to do in regards to offseason moves. But it seems that Brad Holmes has had a plan all along since the very beginning to address the concerns that said fans have. And we're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, I just want to again say this again for those that have donated, for those that have, made charitable donations towards my GoFundMe page to the accident that I had earlier, last month. Again, I just want to give a big shout out, a big appreciation, a big thank you. I'm so grateful for all those that have been, willing to give and the generosity that they have. Again, I will put a picture of what that actual, GoFundMe page is. I'll also put the link in the description of the video. But again, I never ever want to stop saying thank you and show the appreciation that I have because you guys are such an awesome crowd and I'm so thankful for each and every one of y'all. So again, just wanted to say that really quickly before we started this video. So, with this video, let's understand why I'm making this video. If there's one thing I can say about the offseason when it comes to Lions fans, I don't know why it is the case that it is, but to me, it almost seems like every offseason, Lions fans are always trying to, figure out or pigeonhole whatever it is Brad Holmes is going to do in regards to how he should best, fix the roster, suit the needs of the roster, whatever have you. And I kind of talked about this in an episode that I released yesterday, but in a different vein, I'm going to take this conversation because the way I look at it is that we go through this nonsense every stinking year. Every year we've gone through this nonsense about how, fans are like, well, Brad Holmes has to do this. Brad Holmes must do this. If he doesn't do this, it's going to be a failure. If he doesn't do this, he's setting the team back. I've heard it so many times, it's like literally I could pull out a freaking, recording tape and just literally say, yep, I've already heard this one 100 times before and 100 times already it was wrong. But yet here we are for 101 and for 101 times it's about to be wrong again. Why am I saying that? Because again, as we already know, the majority of this offseason, if not the entire damn offseason, has been focused on Brad Holmes finding a way to improve the pass rushing element by making some sort of grandiose, just larger-than-life, massive acquisition for an edge rusher. And again, the two names that have been primarily at the centerpiece of all this have been Myles Garrett and Max Crosby. Again, not to go back down that pasture, go back down that, beaten path, but the point of the matter is those things are not going to happen. Brad Holmes pretty much killed it in his press conference, and pretty much the Raiders have already stated they're working on a contract negotiation extension for Max Crosby, and the Browns have pretty much stated they have no interest in trading Myles Garrett. And until something changes otherwise, I don't expect that to change. So it's like, okay, trading is not going to happen. I mean, I understand for some people, that is absolutely the last thing they want to hear. They think it's an anathema, they think it's sacrilege, they think it's just absolutely the worst possible thing to do, because if you're a Lions fan that absolutely believes that in order to win a Super Bowl this year, you believe you absolutely 100% must make a trade for a guy like Max Crosby or a guy like Myles Garrett. And no other possible, avenue, no other possible solution, no other possible, idea is going to even come close to satiating that point. And you know what? That's great, grand, fine, and glorious if that's what you think. But I'm telling you this right now. Every day that goes by, that group is getting smaller and smaller and smaller until you get to a group of, just in essence, fanatics. The reason why is because reality has now caught up with that mindset and pretty much said, hey, you guys are entitled to think what you want, but you're going to be waiting for a long-ass time. So what is the reality? What is the strategy? The strategy has been a very simple, albeit brilliant one. And again, it shows how Brad Holmes is always thinking 5, 6, 7 steps ahead than what the typical Lions fan is thinking here. And I'm not trying to insult Lions fans' intelligence, but let's understand something here. Brad Holmes does this for a living. He gets paid buku bucks to do this. And considering the fact that I would say he's one of the top GMs in the NFL, he's earned every damn penny that he's gotten. But what's the strategy? Well, as I said, it's brilliant, but it's damn simple. I believe that at no point did Brad Holmes ever once seriously consider making a trade for Myles Garrett or for Max Crosby. Now, as a GM, it's his job to inquire and figure out, okay, if I were to potentially entertain this notion, what would it cost me? Because we already know the Lions reached out to the Browns. We also know that probably they reached out to the Raiders just to see, and gauge interest. But that's my whole point. That's Brad Holmes' job. His job is to say, okay, I've heard that this is possibly going to happen. I've heard that there might be some wiggle room. It would be foolish, and it would also be a dereliction of his duty if he didn't at least inquire. Well, as we already know, the inquiries have been made. It's not going to happen. So for me, it's like, okay, based upon what information we have, trading was never really a serious option. Which then brings us back to the other two avenues, drafting and free agency. Now, I have stated from the very beginning, and anybody who's watched my channel knows this, I have been 100% on board in believing that Brad Holmes is going to draft another edge rusher to pair opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. So now he has these two dynamic duo pass rushing tandem that is going to absolutely set the league pretty much on its ear. I truly believe that's going to happen. Whether or not it's going to be, guys like Jack Sawyer, Mike Green, James Pierce, I have no idea. But the point of the matter is, as I've stated before, I will state it again now, and I will probably state it again in the future until we get to the draft night, I would not at all be surprised if the Lions' very first pick this year is going to be drafting an edge rusher. And I would also say this, I would not at all be surprised if Brad Holmes decides to trade up a couple of spots to go and get the guy that he truly wants. Who that might be, I couldn't tell you. But I do know this. The Lions have met with 7 different edge rushers already. So to me, it's like, okay, that is the position they have spent the most time looking at. That right there tells me, okay, that's who they're going to invest in. And if they're going to invest in somebody, they're going to make sure that if it's the guy they want, as we've seen them do in the past, whether it was with, freaking Jamison Williams or other guys, if they truly want him, they're going to get him. Now, that's one side of the strategy. And again, everybody and their brother knows it. Everybody and their brother expects it. Because the Lions have made their intentions known. We're not going to overlook. We're not going to ignore. We are not going to settle with what we currently have at pass rushing. That's not to say that what they have is bad. Zadarius Smith is still an excellent pass rusher. Aiden Hutchinson is one of the best in the NFL. But you can always stand to have more. So, okay, we already know the Lions are planning on drafting an edge rusher. That one's been pretty much forecasted, long since before the beginning of time, in essence. But what I also believe the Lions are going to do, and what I believe the plan was all along, is that the Lions are going to entertain the idea of making a decent acquisition in free agency, kind of what they did last year with a couple of the guys that we already have. Again, you go back to last year's free agency acquisitions. The Lions made 3 key free agent acquisitions underneath the radar in terms of the amount of money they spent, but yet they turned up being big-time acquisitions for us. Amik Robertson, Kevin Zeitler, and obviously DJ Reader. None of those guys we spent a super crap ton of money on. But all three of them were big key pieces that we used in our playoff run and all that, all that nonsense this year. So, Brad Holmes has proven already you do not have to spend buku crazy bucks in free agency to get quality people to come in and be, contributors. So that then makes me wonder, okay, what are guys that Brad Holmes could realistically go after? I know already right now everybody is talking about the potential of going and getting Joey Bosa because he's a big time name. But I gotta tell you something. I'm not on that bandwagon. I am not on that gravy train. I'll tell you why. And here's the reason why. Because if everybody wants to get on this idea of Joey Bosa, the very first thing I'm going to state is this. You all be some freaking hypocrites. Because for how many freaking off seasons have we heard the same thing? Oh, Brad Holmes only goes after these injury-prone players, and he's just this conservative cheapskate who doesn't want to invest serious money. That is exactly what Joey Bosa would be. The only thing is he's got a shinier bow wrapped around his neck. Because Joey Bosa is a big-time name. Because he's one of the Bosa brothers, opposite of his brother Nick. But if you take a look at Joey Bosa, the last 3 years have not been a good indicator of what he could provide for us. He's missed more time due to injury than he's played. I think the last 3 seasons he's played a combined total of 17 games. In 3 seasons he's played 1 total season. That is not good. And I don't know what the hell Joey Bosa is going to want in terms of a contract, but I guarantee you he's not going to take, a super, super cheap one. He might be willing to work to a certain degree on, haggling out a price. But Joey Bosa, because of his name, if he does hit the free agency market, he's going to want at least some compensation. Now, a better name I think that the Lions would be more inclined to go after is Josh Sweat, who's coming off of the Eagles. Josh Sweat has been a guy that has been pretty steady for the Eagles. He's not been a superstar in terms of making big-time numbers, but he's been solid. He's been reliable. And again, what's one thing we know the Lions really love, other than obviously for those that want to go with the whole fact of, Brad Holmes being cheap and going after injury-prone players? They want guys that are reliable. They want guys that if they put them on the field, they know are going to do their job. Josh Sweat does that. He's not going to wow you per se, but he's reliable. You can trust him to do his job. I know another name that a lot of people are potentially looking at as another option would be, potentially Chase Young if he hits the free agency market. Don't know if it's going to happen, but I know it's another name people are talking about. I also wouldn't be averse to that one. He's had injury problems in the past as well, but nowhere near as extravagant as what Joey Bosa has had. But my whole point is this. When you take a look at what is available, there is tons of options in the draft market, and there's not exactly a whole, what's the word I'm looking for here? A famine or a drought of guys in the free agency pool. Brad Holmes has options. He has the potential to double dip, and we've seen Brad Holmes do that. Whether it's double dip in the draft like he did last year by drafting 2 cornerbacks, or double dip with the same position in both free agency and the draft. We've seen him do it both times. But here's why I think that drafting and, signing an edge rusher makes a hell of a lot of sense, and I think it's the route that Brad Holmes is going to take. Number 1, let's say Brad Holmes makes that decision to go after a Josh Sweat or a Chase Young or whoever else is out there that's of decent quality. Not necessarily a huge wow factor, but decent, above average. Here's what you do. You sign a guy like that to a short deal, maybe a 2-3 year deal, maybe $30 million, something like that. What happens is you now get a steady, backup, rotational, near starting level, vet. And then you also go into the draft and you pair that with a guy that has a high ceiling, high upside rookie to aid the defense. And then maybe Brad Holmes decides, and get a cornerback as well, because he's also looked at a lot of cornerbacks. I think he's looked at 5 of them. But what I'm seeing here is Brad Holmes is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Listen, we are trying to improve our starting defense, absolutely, but we're also trying to find rotational players. We're trying to find good, solid depth players. That's exactly what this kind of a move would tell me. Hey, you go out and you get a guy like Chase Young. You go out and get a guy like Josh Sweat. You've now got a rotational starter that can come in and give guys like Hutchinson or Za'Darius a blow so that way they can go off on the sideline and get some air. And hey, you know what? They can take in for, a couple of plays before it's their time to go back in again. Then on top of that, you've got yourself this high upside rookie who now has all of this different veteran experience, also has Casey Rogers and all this nonsense, exponentially grow, exponentially develop, exponentially get them more prepared to be a starter. And they still are a rotational depth piece that can help as well. And for me, that is the simple but yet absolute brilliant genius of what I think Holmes is trying to do. And then there's another thing about this that's also going to play into it if, Brad Holmes decides to go the double dip of free agency and draft as well. Let's say Brad Holmes does make that free agency acquisition and goes and gets a Josh Sweat or a Chase Young. Now he's hedging his bets on what happens for Za'Darius Smith, because let's understand something here. 2025, after that, Smith's contract is up. He's going to be, 32, 33, something like that. So you have to ask yourself the question, if you decide to bring Smith back, if you're actually interested, how much are you willing to pay him because he's now gotten up there in years? How many years are you actually willing to give him on a contract? And if that isn't something that can work out, okay, it's like, listen, we let Smith walk. We already have a guy that can step right in and replace him as that kind of guy we had when he was here. So now you're covering both bets. You're playing your odds to be better in your favor. To me, again, it makes total sense. And it's exactly what Brad Holmes would do. Hey, I'm making sure I do not put myself in a position to where I can be exposed or left in a position to where I don't have a potential option later on down the road. That's exactly what this strategy tells me. Now, whether or not my strategy is 100% on, only 50% on, I don't know. But to me, it makes total logical sense that that's exactly what Holmes would do because, one, it's based partially off of what we've heard from him, within the most recent conversations, but also, two, it falls very much in line with what he's done in the past. And again, as I've said before, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Be that simple. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to put this episode out there really quickly. It's something I've been thinking about. I've seen a couple of comments about it, and I figured, I'm going to lend my voice to this. So having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. The more we share it, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, to everybody, whether it's your first time watching me, you guys have been watching me forever and a day, I hope y'all enjoyed the content. I hope y'all got something out of it. I also hope that everybody out there has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.